Hey YouTube, I'm going to show you how to adjust the suspension on a bay window bus. It applies to a couple other, at least the general principles, Volkswagens and Torsion suspension. This is my 1971 bus. First thing we got to do though is loosen these nuts. Makes the job a whole lot easier. So let's get right into it. After we removed our cotter pin, we need to loosen the bolt. It's a 46mm socket or 1.13 pretty much the same size. A little bit of leverage. Okay, finally got it broke free. It's still tight, but I had to use a heat gun and like some rust breaker spray. So now that this side's loose, I'll loosen up the other side, then I'll jack up the car and we'll go from there. Alright, now with the car up on jack stands and the hub nuts loose, we're going to pull the wheel off and then we can dive right into the repair. If you either can't get this nut loose or you for some reason don't want to take the whole drum and hub assembly off, you don't have to. You can remove these two bolts and then just pull the drum off. The hub stays on, but that is kind of a pain and you'll see why. But basically it makes it more difficult to disconnect the parking brake once you're inside, which helps maneuver everything around for the job. So I'm going to pull this off and hopefully this hub comes off smoothly. Parking brake loose. This rubber mallet really helps vibrate everything loose, and there we go. Really what we're trying to get at is removing this. This is the parking brake cable, and if we pull that off, it just helps this whole assembly swing back and out of the way. There you go. That one is tight. Alright. I'm going to keep this assembly all together because it was a pain in the ass to completely put that spring in the last time that I did one of these. So I'm just going to leave the spring in and hope that everything kind of stays together for reassembly. This is how to remove the clip that holds in the e-brake cable. I just take a pick and I pull the sheath back, then I twist that at a little bit of an angle and just pull it out. And installation is the same thing, just pull that back, kind of twist that while you're putting it on there. And then take it from there. It should just pull out like that. Now, hose is not very flexible and friendly, so kind of got to fight it. You're going to want to remove your shock bolts, so there's one at the bottom to remove, and then there's one up in here in the top, and then the next thing we'll remove is our CV axle right here. If your shock looks like this on one side and that on the other side, probably is because of a CV boot failure and that's probably CV grease all over there. So you might want to check your CV boots when you take them off and replace them if necessary. It's either a 6-point Allen wrench or a 12-point star, and probably either a 6mm or an 8mm depending on the fastener. If your CV boots, your CVs are good, and you want to reuse the axle, I suggest putting it in bags so that way nothing gets in the grease on the ends. You'll add a little bit more grease later, but you don't want to contaminate it, get any metal or anything in there that could ruin the axle itself or the CV joint. I always label my CV joints. Alright, so this says PS for passenger side. I have an arrow and out pointed at the outside, so that way I remember. Okay, now that the CV axle's out of the way, everything's off, you want to mark like lines on here and up on the top here, so that way you ensure when you pull this off that when we put it back on, you can get it back into the exact same place. You don't have to worry about your alignment. Alright, so I started getting this up with my flat blade screwdriver from below. Now I have this nice little space. I'm just going to keep prying it up, and it's free. We'll just pop this out and try not to put too much pressure on that brake line, and there we go. That is the next step. Now we're going to remove these 4 bolts. Alright, if you take out your torsion bar and it looks like this, you should clean it off, grind it down, and repaint it so that way it looks like that. Make sure you know which one is your right and left. From the factory, they should have R and an L painted on them, but if not, you should make sure to mark them. Also, you should index on the vehicle where it goes and on the torsion bar as well to match it up. Now that we have a clean torsion bar, we're going to put a little bit of grease on the end. This is just moly grease. That way it helps it slide in and out a little better, and also a little bit of grease prevents rust on the parts that are not painted. Index this in straight up and down how I had it when I pulled it out. Alright, so now I've already made my adjustment on the other side, so I know I'm aiming for 26 degrees on my angle right here, which meant I moved the inside splines 5 splines this way, and then I moved this piece 5 splines up, which ends up moving it a little bit more than 4 degrees. Alright, now that I've turned that 5 splines in the direction I want the inside splines to go, I'm going to put on my donut here, a powdered donut, powdered with some real talc powder, if I can speak English. Basically, this is what I got just off Amazon. Pure talc, nothing else. And then I'm gonna line up. I have a line right here. You can see it as silver, and also a silver line right here. So I'm gonna line those up, and then from there, I'll turn this 5 splines up. With the magnetic angle finder. Okay. I am currently at 25.5, 26 degrees. So I'm within a half of a degree, maybe even a little less than half of a degree from my other side. I'm happy with that. I'm gonna bolt this together and then put it on the wheels and see if it sits level. Sometimes the torsion bars are more stretched on one side than another, and so you might have to add a half a degree on one side or subtract half a degree from one side to get it to sit perfectly level. So it's not just angles. Sometimes you have to make other adjustments. I have a bunch of talc powder in here. In this donut, already inserted in here, and I'm going to set it on here. And these are what the original VW bolts look like, and they're pretty short, and they're also can be a pain to get started. So I replaced them with a similar bolt. This is just a 10.9 grade. The originals are 8.8s, but I'll err on the side of caution. I'm just gonna get these started on here with this. That way, when I lift up the torsion arm and everything, it's not going to fly off there. That way it's a lot safer. And then I'm going to just slowly tighten these down, and I'm going to help by clamping on this with this clamp. Just whatever I can do to get it to move on there nicely. Just kind of double check my bolts. These don't have an insane amount of torque on them, and for this step I just like to get them tight, not, you know, muscle man on there, because we might have to take them back off. And I'm just gonna put the wheels back on and check it all out. Okay, now the bus is back down on the ground, on the wheels. It's a little bit lower, which is what I was going for. These buses are supposed to sit a little bit nose high, because once you get in and you're driving, it actually levels it out, and I had it so that way when nobody was sitting in it, it was level, and that was just a little bit too high. So I verify with a level. I'm not gonna really show you, I already checked it, but you can verify as well. Okay, so on these bolts up here, we're torquing that to 25 foot-pounds, and then the bolts that are down here on the hub, we're going to torque those to 94 foot-pounds. So get all that torqued as your next step once you're happy with all of the adjustments. We're going to put on our brakes. So first we need to feed our e-brake cable into the vacuum plate. Okay, now we have both of our retaining clips on. The brake system's rebuilt. All you have to do is throw your hub, wheel, drum on, and adjust it all up.